Gang's all here. Y'all ready to get going? Let's do it, Jason. All right. Good morning. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Jason Moore. I'll be your room host for the 10:15 session, which is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, as it's the only waters I've been swimming in the last 10 years. We're going to get a digital delivery update today on NCDOT's efforts on that, presented by Jennifer Evans, North Carolina DOT Technical Services Lead, and Everett Lovering from Kimley Horn. Please welcome me in welcoming our presenters.
All right, thank you, Jason. And I guess you all heard the announcement yesterday, so I'm not actually technical services anymore. I'm pre-construction. But Derek changed his name tag, and he didn't change mine. So for today, I'm the boss of my own world. That's what I told him. So I appreciate you all coming out this morning to listen a little bit about digital delivery at NCDOT. I think Everett and I will share lots of good high-level information for this room, and we should have time at the end for question and answer. So please write down your questions, save them up for us. I think the intended audience for this presentation, and I kind of said it yesterday a little bit at the panel, what is more project managers or high level, and then we'll have a focus session later on more design focused. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and dig in. And so I'm going to start with our digital delivery definition. You may have already heard this, but I think it's really important to ground ourselves in how we have defined digital delivery. And so we have defined digital delivery as the use and transfer of digital data between pre-construction, construction, asset management, and external customers. And we'll stop there for a minute, and I'm just going to go ahead and note that it doesn't say 3D. And this is a topic that Jason and I have lovingly debated many times. And Jason would say most states have 3D in their definition, and I prefer to not limit ourselves to 3D because there is 2D information that we can also use and transfer digitally. So we left it off, but obviously 3D is the ultimate goal, but we want to deliver any information we can digitally, whether that be 2 or 3. The purpose is to deliver data in a consumable format to maximize the benefits of the information for decision making and program delivery. And I would say in NCDOT, from our digital delivery efforts, we have chosen to focus on design. And so there's lots of words that going around about transformation and delivery, and you might have heard me say that in the general session a little bit yesterday, but when we're talking digital delivery, we have chosen to focus our efforts on design. So the next slide just has some bullets about how we're positioning North Carolina for the future. And I'm not going to read through all of those. You can kind of do that as I speak. But I would say if you look at those four topics on the slide there, they align very closely with things that you heard Chief Norman say in his messaging yesterday, I think, and also Daniel Johnson in his pillars. And so taking our cues from our leadership, right, we're working to align and modernize and really enhance our quality, our safety, our communication. All of these things, in the end, lead to project delivery. So we are not doing this in a vacuum. Efforts in North Carolina DOT and our industry and our team in general are trying to build on national momentum. So we're not doing this alone, right? And we're trying to look at what has been done across the nation and really focus in. I'm going to do that center bullet there. Our journey reflects a deliberate, collaborative effort across the department. And that's what I think, and you'll hear Everett stress this as well, is we're being very realistic about this. And, you know, honestly, sometimes in the team, I feel like I'm the person that's pulling the reins back. But, like, I'm trying to make sure that our approach is very intentional, slow, with purpose. And we're not, I mean, we all want the ultimate vision, but we have to be very foundational in the way that we approach it. We have to bring people along with us. And so I feel like overall that middle bullet really does speak to what we are trying to achieve. And what we want you to understand as our partners in all of this is we're not jumping out of the gates and trying to get to ultimate goal fast. We're trying to do this in small, practical steps that bring us efficiency, bring our partners with us. So real quickly, and you may have seen this from the past, but just to look at our digital delivery organization, I think it's just really important to remind everybody that we're all in this together. And so you'll see here on the screen, of course, the executive leadership group that was put together. You've got a pre-construction, construction, and asset management working group below that structure. I lead the pre-construction group. Troy Brooks and Liam Shannon lead the construction working group. And then Giles Harrell and Mary Whitby lead the asset management group. And we all have touch points to talk to one another from a business perspective, from a technology perspective. Underneath us, you see the umbrella of our PEF1 team. That's our extensive team of consultants that we've brought on to help us through this. On the left-hand side, then, you see PEF coordination and CAD coordinators. And so I know a lot of you either participate in the PEF coordination group or the CAD coordination group. I talked to several folks today that are involved in some of those meetings, and that's just another way that we're bringing people along with us, whether you're in the division or you're in industry. Then on the other side there, you see the ACEC and the AGC. And I hope yesterday in the general session you saw those folks are sitting on that stage there. And overall, we had not rehearsed at all what we were going to say, but I felt like you heard a message that was pretty succinct across that panel of people, and that's because we're talking and we're using our industry, we're using those meetings that were mentioned as the way to share information and get buy-in. At the center of all of this, and there's two centers there, training and support and change management. And so there was some discussion yesterday about workforce development and training people for our future. And at all of this, anything that we do, we have to put into processes, or we have to automate so good that you don't need a job aid. That would be my goal, because every time I need a job aid to work a tool, I can't find the job aid, and that's just frustrating. And so wouldn't it be amazing if we just had processes that were so good we didn't need job aids to tell us how to use them? So I'm going to turn it over to Everett. He's going to speak a little bit about industry misconceptions.
Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, so my name's Everett Loving. I work with Kimley Horn. I'm project manager. That's my day job, working for the divisions and PMU. But I'm also a part of the PEF1 team, which is a group of consultants and a contractor who was brought on by the department to support them in delivering the digital delivery initiative. My specific role there is the pre-construction lead. So we're primarily focused on how do we elevate our pre-construction designs and move what we're delivering forward so that we can be thinking about the handoffs with contractors and asset management. So there's lots of misconceptions regarding what digital delivery is. If I asked this room to throw out definitions of that, we'd probably get 80 to 100 different answers about what digital delivery is. And one of the most common things that we hear is to the point of, is it just 3D modeling? And the answer is no. 3D modeling is a huge part of this, and it's the department's goal, and you're going to see in many of our slides to talk about how can we have better 3D models, how can we have more consistency across different firms in terms of what we deliver, how do we make sure that what we're modeling makes sense and is practical, but it's also more than that. So when you hear data, things that I want you to start thinking about is comment responses. How can we make sure that we're passing comment responses between an early review in the PDN, maybe the DRPS review, and then carrying that through so when I'm at 90% stages, we're not kind of recircling back to those comments. Another really important one is quantities, right? How can we make sure that our quantity evolution all the way from feasibility studies through to when we deliver to plans checking is consistent? This is helpful for estimates. It's also helpful for better bid packages. So we're looking at more than just 3D modeling, though that is a big part of it. Sometimes we get asked, is it a specific software? Is it just Open Roads and Open Rail and Open Bridge? And it's not. For most of us in the room, if you are kind of in those pre-construction design elements, that's probably what you're using majority-wise. But we're also thinking about the handoffs downstream. So if you're not aware, most contractors don't use Bentley products. And so as we're thinking about what we're handing off to the contractor, we need to make sure that we're not just giving Bentley models and then expecting them to be able to use that. And that's part of our coordination with the contractor group. I'm going to hit on in a few slides talking about what are actual valuable exports that we're going to start packaging with some of our projects. And that's really getting into, okay, well, what's useful for us in pre-construction design, and then what's helpful for when we hand it off to the contractor. So some of you might say, well, aren't we already doing digital delivery? Those of you who have kind of been through the final design standpoint, especially when we're thinking about design files, today, especially if you do a central let, you package all your design files and you zip them up and you post them on SharePoint, and then they are a part of the package that the contractor can choose to use. We presented to AGC a couple weeks ago, and we had a little bit different of a presentation, but really talking about kind of this downstream use. And there were very few hands that came up when we said, how many of you are using the files we are currently giving you? And there's a lot of reasons for that. One of them is the data isn't predictable, it's not consistent across consultants, and it's not digestible for them. And so it's our goal to start thinking about, as we move towards that final handoff between pre-construction and construction, how are we giving them things that they would want to use, that they can trust and rely on? We always get asked, and people automatically jump, I hear digital delivery and I hear signing and sealing 3D models. So I want to say this very clearly for the room. We are not moving away from PDF plans. We are trying to elevate our design deliverables that we give to the contractor, but PDF plans this year, in the coming years, is still meant to govern and be the controlling use in terms of what to actually build. You know, one of the reasons we have inconsistency in the past between PDFs and design files is a lot of times we were designing things, and then as we were preparing our plans, we were making hand edits, or we were changing things inside the plans. Inherently, when you do that, you are creating inconsistency between the plans you deliver and the files that were the starting point, essentially. In ORD and OBD, it is set up where the model is the center of your design. Those of you who might be frustrated in the room because you can't make hand edits nearly as easy as you could before. And that's important, because what we want is we want the plans to be a reflection of what the model actually shows. So our design files should be more in agreement and more consistent with what the plan deliverables are. I'm going to hit on in a few slides about, well, what is the uncertainty about why can't I get comfortable with the design files, especially for those of you in the room who are project managers. We're going to talk about some of the things that are coming down the pipeline. We want to make sure people who aren't in CAD can feel comfortable about the design files, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But for now, I'm going to pass it back over to Jennifer. She's going to talk about value added.
All right, so when we think about adding value, obviously the first thing that we need to think about is what problems are we solving, right? And so stopping to really think about what problems are we solving. Coordination issues between disciplines, it's the top bullet. It's the top bullet there for a reason. And so, you know, Everett mentioned that we talked to the AGC, and one of the things that we talked about when we presented to them was projects don't get built by plan sets. They get built by a contract that is for the whole project. And so oftentimes when we have misses in design, or we make maybe poor decisions in design, those things become abundantly apparent when they get on a job site and you know, the rubber hits the road, right? And so the coordination issues between disciplines, to me, is one of the biggest things that we need to make sure we address, that we have a collaborative workspace where we can see all discipline work. And for those of you that have ever worked with me on a project, you might have heard me joke about turning on all y'all's levels. And, you know, there's much truth to be revealed when you have somebody go into the technology and just turn on all y'all's levels. And it sometimes reveals things that you don't see when you only look at things from different plan set perspective. So our hope would be that eventually we have whatever it is assured me, we're going to have a turn on all y'all's levels built into this process somewhere. So anyway, I just want to focus us really on always making sure that whatever we're doing, we are working to solve problems. So in the end, who benefits from these efforts? And so I hope each of you sitting here can think about some way that you will benefit and how our industry will benefit. Obviously, designers will benefit, with enhanced interdisciplinary validation, construction teams, fewer assumptions, better visualization at bid. I would say I was very surprised at how much feedback and comments we got from construction industry. Mostly after our formal session, we had a good bit of dialogue, a lot of interest from construction teams. And honestly, a lot of those folks are already working in different platforms and doing visualization and modeling on their own. And so really enhancing what we provide them. Maintenance and operations, obviously providing digital as-built, helping to figure out how we better support timing our maintenance, and then agency leadership, of course, because we're increasing our confidence in our constructability, working to reduce our errors and emissions. So the next slide, harder, better, faster, and stronger, talks about the ways that we can improve our data quality, reduce our scope and delays, recognizing that these things don't come automatically, right? There is a learning curve. I was talking to a few folks this morning from division, and you know, it is taking some additional time right now to do designs if you're not familiar with the software, and we recognize that. But hopefully as we work and we move toward guidance and training and information and people get better experience, we will actually get to the place where we achieve that green star in the middle of that slide there. So on this slide, impacts to coordination, there's a few points about, and I kind of already talked about this a little bit, the turn on all y'all's levels, but the first bullet here says model, federation, and data. And so I'll be honest, Everett put these slides together for us today, right? And so he put that bullet on there, and I put a note in here. I'm going to need an expansion of what model, federation, and data means, because I didn't know what that word meant. And then I said, we have a new CAD glossary. I'm going to do a shameless plug here, because we have a new CAD glossary that came out in the updates that you all should have received about our CAD manual, and there's a CAD glossary. So I pulled out my CAD glossary, and I said, I wonder if federated model is in here. And it is, and it's well defined. And so for those of you who, like me, did not know what a federated model means, it can also be a discipline model. It is a model that is compiled by integrating different discipline models together into one model through either linking and or importing. So I think that's actually a turn on all y'all's levels model. So we have tried very much to capture words that we use in our conversations in this glossary. And so I hope that you will, I printed it because I'm going to use it. And most of the time when we're in meetings and words get thrown around, I either check to see if they're in the glossary or I point out they're not and I get them added, right? So hopefully it will be as helpful to you as it's going to be to me. How is data used after letting? And so I do think, and I kind of alluded in my Blockbuster analogy yesterday, often underutilized today after letting. And we talked about those PDF that we save in perpetuity. When I first started in NCDOT a long time ago, we had plan racks in the attic in Division 2. And it was a pull-down steps into an attic that had wooden shelves of hanging racks of plan upon plan upon plan. And as staff engineer, one of my jobs was to go up and pull as-builts for people that were looking for information, right? And so I had a whole catalog, and I would go up in the attic, and I would get the plan racks down. And at this point in time, I don't know that we're even keeping paper as-builts anymore, because we tried to move away from that, and we went to electronic, and maybe we're halfway doing that. And so I hope that we get to a place where we have a very solid as-built program, because for folks that work in divisions, maintenance, small projects, you can glean a lot of information from that. And so we want to make sure we make that more accessible. All right, so I'm going to turn it back over to Everett. He's going to dive into design engineer expectations.
All right, so let's drill down a little bit more into what am I supposed to model. So am I expected to model everything? A lot of times this question comes up because in terms of what we did in MicroStation, it was a lot less than what we're doing now. And so we're trying to answer that question of what's helpful and what is valuable. And so we worked through with the department in the fall of last year, level of development, which is really getting after where does the department want to go in terms of how much modeling do they want to do, 2D or 3D. And the vision behind that was we don't want to waste our time on things that don't matter. And if you've been in the open bridge, open road space, you know that you can spend a lot of time. Sometimes the hardest part is going from a 90% ready model to 100%. It's that extra kind of detail that takes a lot of the time. So for the department, their intent is that we only focus on things that are valuable and that will be used downstream. So how do models, plans, and quantities coexist? So I kind of mentioned this earlier. This visual is kind of a good starting point of just, you can see this plan that I bet most people in the room would actually be able to see and understand if we looked at it. But what's happening right now is now the model is coming up out of the space, and so you can start to see, hey, there's a little bit of a toll plaza here that's got some underground utility elements, and then just like that, now we've got kind of a roadway working on top of it. And what's really powerful about that, if you think about it, is, so sure, all of us could probably get our heads wrapped around that plan if we had enough time. But in 10 seconds, we were just able to understand a lot of the complicated systems that are working underneath there. That's the power of having everything modeled, not just roadway. And that's what we're trying to move towards, is this isn't just visualization for the sake of, maybe a public meeting map or public involvement, though that is valuable. It's also really valuable for us during design to be able to see all these things together. Let me run that back one more time, because I think another important development here is just the plan is not the origin point of the model. It is the cut and how we're displaying information from the model. But that's a big shift, and it's an important shift of the plans really are just a representative of what's in your model. If your plans aren't showing good information, it's because your design is flawed. And so that's where we want to, when we're thinking about quality reviews, we're moving past what the label says and more into what does your design actually say. Is additional information produced? Sometimes. And I think that's where we're trying to provide a little bit more clarity from the department in terms of what is expected at any given submittal, especially when it comes to design elements. In general, the core responsibilities remain the same. In terms of what you're expected from a roadway designer or from a hydro designer, those core responsibilities remain the same. But the deliverables become more model-based, and we're focused on data, accuracy, and clarity. So what I want to show here is there's a graphic here of just kind of a corridor here. And it's kind of got our super elevation on here. It's probably a little small for folks to see, but basically we're in a full 6% rotation here, and then we rotate back to normal crown over here. So this is not an extra add-on. This is just a setting that if we set up the workspace correctly, it can do. Notice these light blue areas right here and right here. This is representing where there is flat cross slope, which for any good designer should immediately flag, I want to go look at my profile and make sure that we don't have a low point in this area because of hydroplaning concerns. So you'll notice over here we've got a low point on our shoulder because we've modeled this correctly in terms of our rotation from travel lanes over to shoulder. And then likewise, as we're getting back towards normal crown, we have another low spot. Again, this is visualization add-on that doesn't require extra work if we set it up correctly, and it's allowing me as a designer to step right in immediately and process this much quicker. The other thing I'm thinking about when I look at this is I've got actual slope stakes, not something that somebody's hand-drawn in. And so I can see that it's reading the existing terrain up there. So I know that, okay, my model's working, it's got my profile on there, it's tying down. And I'm a little curious about this driveway here. Why is it that my slope stakes are taking this long to kick far out, but my driveway is saying that it's right here? And so I've got some questions here. I want to go take a look at that driveway model. And so by getting more fluent with the model, it actually helps us ask design questions earlier than, well, that was a 2D drawn that reflects the model. Now we've disconnected design from the production. So these are the kind of things we're trying to work on as an industry to help kind of elevate and try to ask things of, okay, if the software can do this for us, how can we make sure we're utilizing this over and over again? Won't this increase design effort? In some ways, yes. In some ways, the design effort is higher. And for those of you who have been in this space for years, you know this, that when you're in open roads or you're in OBD, we're asking more in terms of how to do design. However, long term, what we're seeing, and this is outside of North Carolina, is that this does pay dividends in terms of what we see from a project life cycle. It results in fewer change orders. It results in fewer issues in construction. It results in projects not being delayed because we've coordinated farther in advance. The other advantage is as we automate production more and more, that becomes less of where we spend our time. So we're spending less time labeling and adding kind of comments on plans, and we're spending more time modeling driveways or more time advancing our hydro design. And so it's really a reallocation of effort to where it matters, and then asking the software to do more of the production legwork. That's really what we're trying to do. How does this affect QA/QC? So earlier I talked about kind of the project managers. How do I enter into this? Maybe I don't even have Bentley products on my computer. I certainly don't feel comfortable with how could I get in there. And so Bentley Infrastructure Cloud is a product that I would encourage folks in the room, if you're not familiar with, to explore kind of after this week, after the conference. It's Bentley's product that is specifically related to project managers. You don't need to have ORD or anything installed. It is a web-based viewer. What you do is you set up in ProjectWise your model that directly links to this, and it creates a copy for you that can sync at whatever regularity you want, every night, every week, whatever you want. You can pull it up on Wi-Fi very easily, and then it's really intuitive in terms of, if I'm a project manager, how can I pull up in cross-sections? How can I pull up in alignments? It's very quick, and it's very data-rich. And so that's where the department is going to be moving towards. We're trying to figure out what's the right way to say, for this given product, we're going to have this kind of 3D model review. We're going to take our time with that, figure out what works and makes sense before we roll it out everywhere. But the idea is, to Jennifer's point, if we have all these files that are all in 3D or 2D space, we need to turn them on, and we need to all look at them together, both industry project managers and NCDOT project managers. So with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Jennifer. She's going to talk about implementation reality check.
Okay, so one of the questions that I see a lot of is this project going to be digital delivery? And so what we felt like we needed to discuss is digital delivery all or nothing. I will say one of the things that I've learned through this process is in OpenX platform, there is a level of modeling that has to be done on every project. So every project essentially has a model. So there is potential to digitally deliver any project that we would choose to. And so when you say, is this project going to be digital delivery, the answer can always be yes. The question that our teams are going to have to start to work through is to what level. And I think, and I don't want to get ahead of us because Everett's going to talk about standards and all those things in his next section, but what was missing from an NCDOT perspective was, what is the model? What do we expect from it? And then we have to help our project managers and our project teams understand how they talk through what's appropriate for a project, how you scope that, how much effort that might take. And so to me, that's the piece that, and you'll hear in the next section, we'll tell you what we've done, but there's still a piece that's missing. And so to really get us to a place where we're openly having good conversations about what level of digital delivery do we want on a project, we still have some work to do. That doesn't mean we can't be doing that now, and I think we have a good number of pilots that you guys hopefully are aware. We did a call. We're looking at some pilots for the construction-ready electronic files, and so we are actively looking to do digital delivery in some projects in some shape and form. But I just want everyone to understand that just because you say you're digitally delivering something doesn't mean you're modeling the world. And so clash detection is a great example. I think that's an area that a lot of folks are super interested in. And specifically, we're maybe looking at drainage pipes and utilities, right? That's a biggie that has conflicts. And so some projects may be appropriate and some may not. And there's going to be a level of effort that's going to go into doing a really good clash detection for a project that was an urban widening or something. And so teams are going to have to be very selective about putting the right project with the right digital delivery effort. So more to come on that in the future. How do we adapt to new skill sets? And so obviously, as we're adapting, transition period is expected. I think we're in a transition period. We'll continue to be in a transition period. We may be in that for a long time because, quite honestly, as soon as I get adjusted to some technology, there's some new, right? And so transition period may be in perpetuity. But standards, like I said, we have set them. They also, too, will continue to evolve and transition. Training and collaboration is key, and we're really trying to focus in on that in 26, end of year, 27. One of the challenges that we had, one of our goals was to go ahead and start implementing training. And one of our challenges we found was we couldn't train because we hadn't defined and we didn't know what it was, right? And so pretty hard to teach something that you haven't established. And so I think we have our eyes set on late 26, and we are focused on our project managers, our NCDOT project managers first, because I see them as the leaders of teams that are going to have to help consultants and our industry move forward in projects. And so we're going to focus on them first, training them on scoping efforts and understanding and connecting them to viewers and things like that to put them in a position to help lead teams forward. Last bullet says we can only move as fast as industry learning curve allows. And I would just say we are following that, and we are listening, and we want to have you guys as partners where you learn, we learn, and we're going to shine a light on cool things that all of us are doing. How do we handle risk and liability? Everett said this, but I'm going to say it again. We recognize that model as a sealed, model as a legal document is an aspirational goal that we are not ready to talk about. And we are just, again, slow and deliberate, stepping through with PDFs, looking for ways to simplify our PDF plan production to make that work less, and so we can invest more time and energy in the model. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Everett.
All right, so to me, that's the theory behind the case in terms of all those slides building up to now. And now we can actually talk about some very practical things, some of which was announced last week, some of which will be coming later in 2026. So we're really going to talk about new standards and guidance that either have been rolling out, or we're going to give a tip of the hat basically to where we're headed in this space. So I want to talk first about the Unified Workspace and OpenX 2024. NCDOT historically has had a workspace that has been split up based on discipline units. It's been role-based in its origin, and NCDOT made the decision last summer to really start kind of reworking that approach. It reflects the kind of truth that a project is all the disciplines combined, not individual disciplines. And so what was released last week is a unified workspace. It's maintained by the new CAD Support Services Group, CAD Innovation Team, EDCS, but it is not discipline kind of individual elements anymore. We've paired that up with OpenX 2024, which is another version of Bentley software, has new capabilities inside of it. And so both of those things have been released as of last week. A part of this is the policy that all new projects from this month forward need to be in OpenX 2024 using that unified workspace. This is going to be a good thing for your design teams because you're going to get all that capabilities of OpenX 2024, and you're also going to be setting yourself up well to be able to have all the other improvements we're going to push out into the workspace in the coming year. There are more workspace enhancements coming in 2026. There were things that we couldn't get in this update that we are planning in the coming months. So this is not the end. This is just the beginning in terms of continuing to make refinements and pushing out those changes so industry has what they need to do design. We'll be talking more about that this afternoon. There's 2 sessions on this, so if you want a deeper dive, I would encourage you to come there. The CAD manual is also an element that is new. So historically, NCDOT has had various CAD standards, typically governed by different disciplines, split up in different buckets. And so the department thought that it would be valuable to kind of have a single source for CAD standards. So this is a brand new manual that was just put out. The breakup of it is kind of, we'll go into more detail this afternoon, but it really kind of is giving narrative about what is actually in the workspace and then what is the CAD standards policy. Future versions are going to be going into more details like file naming guidance, sheeting and printing guidance, and submittal guidance. The one plug I'll give there regarding file naming guidance, because that can stir up a lot of things for people, is just think about for a minute how the department had to come up with some standards regarding PDF naming and some predictability. And the reason for that was so that when I get a plan sheet, when I get some sort of plan set, that there's some consistency between consultants across the state. As we move into this electronic space and we're sharing files amongst one another in pre-construction and then ultimately providing that to the contractor, it is going to be important to have some standardization. The goal is not additional rules and requirements and hoops to jump through. It's trying to make sure we're all swimming in the same direction so that it's predictable and consistent in terms of what we're delivering. And yes, so more to come on that. Would encourage you to attend Vaseem and I presenting on that later this afternoon. So I plugged this a little bit before. I could probably spend a whole hour talking about level of development, but if this concept is new to you, it's going to be an important one to kind of get up to speed on. We presented on this at NC Lug last year. I'm sure we'll present again more coming up. Level of development is often called LOD, and sometimes when we say LOD, we can think level of detail. So I really want to kind of talk about those two together. Level of development is all about the design intent and the reliability of the data in terms of how we design and what we're giving to the contractor. We're trying to set clear expectations that when I place a manhole box in my design and the contractor sees that, what can he rely on building-wise, right? And so what can he say, hey, that's just a cell that was dropped versus one that actually has design intent behind it. So the overall vision for this is that as we produce more and more higher quality data models and we give that to the contractor, we would be designating, hey, this is more for reference only, or this has actually been thought through and you can rely on it. And that is a tricky business. We spent all of the fall working through this with the NCDOT units. The NCDOT level of development spreadsheet is available on the digital delivery website now. We walked through with every single unit the pay items inside the spec book. And we've gone into detail on every single one and identified what is the minimum LOD that the department wants to get to, and are we aiming to be modeling that as 2D or 3D? Because level of detail is really just kind of how much detail you have in a specific element, but development is even more than that. It is, did I think it through when I placed it? So as we worked through this, there was lots of interesting conversations, maybe just giving you a flavor for kind of what some of the discussions were. When we were working with the hydraulics group, we were working through kind of pipe plugs and pipe collars. Both of these pay items, as you think about them, generate cubic yard quantities. So as you think about it, okay, well, cubic yards, we need some sort of volume component. 3D is inherently what you would need for a volumetric component. But we really dug in and we said, okay, well, pipe plugs are typically used when we're in construction, we're building some of the pipe, we're going to bury it, and we need to plug it for a moment. And we really just need to know generally the location where that's happening. Does it really make sense to ask industry to model the full length of the plug and to fill out the specific dimension of the pipe? That seems like a little bit of a waste. And so what you'll see here for pipe plugs specifically is that where the department wants to move is a 100 LOD, which is really just a point value. All we're saying is where we've designed that to the point, that's accurate. And then just a 2D design. Pipe collars can be in a similar category. You can think, wow, I'm just collaring one pipe to another. But as the department worked through it, they realized, wow, well, that's actually kind of critical information as we're thinking about inverts and the size of the collar and wanting to think about the existing pipe and the proposed pipe. So that's just a taste. I mean, we did this for several hundred pay items with every single unit working through them. So we want people to know this. This is available online, and it's a signal of where we're headed. As we started talking about LOD, we realized, well, if we say we want pipe collars modeled in 3D, we might need to give a little bit more guidance. And some units have done a phenomenal job already in terms of trying to talk about what's expected from a 3D modeling standpoint. One of the things we started to realize is the PDN shines when it talks about kind of, hey, maybe go talk to this unit or this unit at a given different point, but where it's potentially lacking is in the 3D design elements. And so this is an example design workflow mapping that is still in process. So do not take this as how we should be modeling. But the reason I brought it up here is because I wanted to show these are some of the challenges that we're having to work through that weren't true before, but now are challenges we have to think through. So let's think about a retaining wall at a bridge abutment. I'm thinking about kind of generally an MSE wall that's sitting in front of foundations for a bridge indent. And who starts the roadway envelope? Well, one option would be that in 2RD2, when you're developing your DRPS, the roadway designer would be responsible for applying that template. They're the one who knows about the grade both above and down below. So they're the one who's going to build the MSE template that will be inside of their modeling. Then potentially we could hand that off to geotech, who's going to go do their own geotechnical designs and get borings in those areas. But now we need to make sure that we're coordinating with structures. And so they're going to get involved in 2ST2 during their PGD's development. And now we have to make a decision of that model, that MSE wall, who is modeling that anymore? Do we take it out of the roadway designer's bucket and it's now something structures develops? Maybe, but as we keep moving through here, it gets even more complicated. So what happens if that MSE wall has a ditch behind it, right? Who's actually doing that ditch profile behind there? Well, we need to talk to our drainage partners, and they may do the ditch profile, but we may want to reference that into our model. And then the roadway folk, I mean, guys, I think you guys, if you're doing design right now, you know that this is the hard part, right? Then we have to get a final model for potentially roadway leading that. But ultimately right now, Geotech is the one who owns the sheet. And so is there a roadway model that Geotech now needs to get comfortable that sets us up into a retaining wall sheet? These are some of those historic practices that as we move into more connected design, the department wants to add clarity about who's expected to do what when. And so we're hoping in 2026 to give some more clarity. There's probably a dozen of these very challenging workflows, very interdisciplinary. I mean, this is literally just retaining walls at bridge abutments. We could talk about noise walls. We could talk about wing walls that wrap back around the structure. There's a lot going on there. But this is a taste of what we're...
May I interrupt?
Totally, yeah.
How many of you have been on a project where there was a problem or discrepancy between a wall? I thought every person would raise their hand because it seems to be a universal problem.
It is.
And I hear from Geotech, because they're the receiver of wall envelopes from roadway and structures, stationing doesn't match, or they don't align, or they don't line up. And I feel like this is a great example of just a universal problem that we can solve with processes and technology.
That's right. That's right. Of just communicating so that we know when we're scoping or when you're a designer, right, to know whose role is what and make sure we're talking amongst disciplines. So I talked a little bit earlier about 3D review. So this is Bentley Infrastructure Cloud up on the screen. And so really what we're looking at is there's been some new guidance about what's expected at field inspections. And so big picture, our vein is trying to think about how we can set up 3D models consistently across all projects, such that this could be something that we could use inside a field inspection design review meeting where we can turn everything on, like Jennifer is saying. So what you can see is happening right now is this is live. This is not sped up for some demo setting, but basically we've got a profile here, we've got a bridge, and we're able to pull up the cross-section and the profile live and be able to review it. So for project managers, if you've, again, been intimidated by ORD, this is a great way for you to be able to pull all your data. What you can see that's happening up in the top right is actually looking at the settings and being able to review kind of what's the actual kind of side slope going on here. We can see our drainage pipes down in the bottom left underneath the cross-section, so we're kind of looking at potential conflicts there. If we had our utilities modeled, we'd also be able to take a look at that. The review settings, to me, work way better in Bentley Infrastructure Cloud, like being able to pull cross slopes, looking at lane widths, a lot better than the cross-section labeler tool inside actual ORD. And just being, the speed to me and the ability to kind of pull up whatever you might need is really helpful. This is now going to get into kind of some side slopes, right? And so being able to kind of pull off a dimension immediately from your side slope and looking at length and height, all that can be really valuable. And again, I would just encourage PMs who are maybe been reticent, this is something that you can use immediately, right? If your project team is setting up your iModels correctly, and there will be more guidance coming out in the coming year about how we want to do that through NCDOT's ProjectWise. It's not just roadway elements, and I'm always guilty of spending too much time on roadway examples as a roadway background. But what it's about to get into is some of the power in terms of looking at hydraulic systems and being able to very quickly pull up your pipe profiles, looking at your different structure numbers, inverts in and out, looking at grades. Again, what we're trying to show here is the technology has power if we know how to use it. And so the department is going to continue to put out, hey, here's some guidance, but these are all things that Bentley also has guidance on how to do for your projects. And so I would encourage PMs to look into this for your project. It doesn't take long to set up, and it can be very valuable. All right, so now I want to move into construction-ready electronic files. This is a new term that we're rolling out. Before I forget, the construction-ready electronic files guidance is also on the digital delivery website. So if you're curious about that, please go look into that. But essentially, as we've started to dig into, okay, well, we provide DGN files already to the contractor. We're already providing Bentley files to him, but they're not using them. And so what is a way that we, as a part of our LET packages, can provide better files and files that are more digestible outside of the Bentley space? And that's where CREFs are coming into play. We anticipate that this will become a consistent deliverable in the coming years, not today or tomorrow, but in the coming years. And these would be deliverables that you would be preparing as you get close to let. There are 6 of them, and what we're doing right now is they are 4 information-only files. These 6 files, alignments and profiles, final grade top surface, final subgrade surface, the existing top surface, and then 3D brake lines and 2D planimetrics. Our plan in 2026 is to share those with contractors and then request feedback on, here's what we're giving you. Is it helpful? Is it not? How can we refine it? So this guidance is very much going to be dynamic, but it is for information only. And the contractor, it has been very clear, will continue to make it very clear. The plans are what governs. So this is us avoiding any risk here, but really starting to step into how can we deliver files that he can use that reflect what our grading is doing. Just for awareness, there are people on our team and other states who are signing and sealing these models currently. And so if we do want to step into the space of, oh my gosh, are we going to sign and seal stuff? We're not planning to sign and seal CREFs tomorrow, but this is where the industry is headed in other states. And so what we're trying to do is let's figure out what's right for North Carolina. Let's figure out what outputs are right for the contractors in North Carolina. And then let's have a very long conversation about how do we help people feel comfortable about these models and giving them as a standard deliverable. That takes years of coordination and agreement and industry coming alongside, just like Jennifer mentioned before. But this is not something that's foreign. North Carolina is not leading the country when it comes to signing and sealing CREFs. All right, and then Jennifer kind of mentioned the pilot program. So for those of you who aren't aware, there are 2 projects currently in construction that we're piloting with contractors. We've identified several other projects that we're going to let this year. Those project teams are preparing CREFs as a part of their deliverables. They will be 4 information-only files. They'll be shared with a contractor, and then as a part of the contract, it's to get dialogue with them. So we want feedback sessions with them. In some cases, we may be dealing with a contractor who is very experienced with this, which will be really helpful. On the other hand, we may be dealing with contractors who this is kind of their first time dealing with modeling, which is also important. We also want to make sure that our contractor partners know how to use these files, and so it's a 2-way street. We're trying to have lots of dialogue, and I'm sure we'll learn quite a bit from those discussions. So all of that is a lot of different guidance, some of it coming soon, some of it already out. Everything that the digital delivery team is doing plans to be anchored inside the PDN. The CAD manual, CREFs, digital delivery elements, all of that is meant to be anchored inside the PDN. So we just had a PDN update in February. There will likely be another PDN update later this year, and it's our intent to include some digital delivery elements inside of that PDN. And really what we want to do is we want to make sure we're giving really good guidance for people who may be really familiar with this space or really not, of how does this affect my project. The PDN is a menu of options, and project managers make the decision in terms of what should be included on their specific project. And so we want to be really clear about some of these items and help folks know when to make decisions. So the first one, OpenX version and workspace policy. One of the confusing things right now is, okay, DOT, you just issued a new workspace and a new OpenX 2024. Does it affect me? You'll notice we gave a policy directive about new projects. The department has over 1,500 active projects, and the department has not given any guidance in terms of an existing project. What am I supposed to do? If you come later this afternoon, the encouragement is going to be, you are welcome to upgrade, and it would probably be in your interest to consider doing that. But what we want to do with the PDN is actually have guidance so that when you start to scope your stage 2 activities or your stage 3 activities, it's one of the questions you ask, and you work with your project manager to be able to say, okay, given this project, where it's at in its life cycle, does it make sense to upgrade to a new version? Does it make sense to move into the unified workspace? We're not there yet with the clarity. We're going to get there, and that's what we want to provide for people. I will say we are probably moving into a place where a project, given its life cycle, multiple years, 4, 6, 8, 10 years, depending on a project life cycle, is going to predictably move through versions over the lifespan of the project. So that's something as industry we're going to have to get more and more comfortable with, of starting in one version and ending in another. But we'll talk more about what that looks like this afternoon and more guidance on the way. When it comes to digital delivery deliverables, there will be a specific section of if a project chooses to do minimum LOD compliance. To hit minimum LOD is really hard, requires a lot of design, requires a lot of work. And so there needs to be guidance about if a project wanted to, and I guess maybe why would they want to, but then how do we scope and write our fees appropriately to capture that effort. Likewise, CREF is a different deliverable. It is on top of what you're already expected to deliver. So we want to be very clear of who should be delivering those when, and then also what kind of scope and fee component should be associated with that. And then lastly, the 3D model review, which projects should use that and what should those expectations be in terms of as I'm writing scope and fee, and then also delivering that. How do we actually deliver that on the projects that make sense? The last thing, and we did not spend enough time on digital quantities, I hope too soon. Digital quantities is a big part of the data handoff, and trying to remove some of the current practice, which is designing and then going to an Excel. We're trying to optimize some of those quantities to have it better linked to the model. The place where our team is working on really in the coming months is going to be item types and adding those in, and then giving clarity about when you're designing curb and gutter, how do you assign the correct item type, and then how would that export out directly to a quantity report that we can all get comfortable with. And by we, I mean NCDOT, industry PMs, plans checkers. Earlier I was talking about like design effort and how we're asking a lot more of designers, and that's true. But for those of you who have been here and know that there's a lot of time spent filling out curb and gutter quantity sheets, if we can set up design outputs that are a lot more automated, we can transition our time to things that are critical, which is focusing on your curb and gutter design being correct, and the outputs just flow from them. That's what our team's working to do, and we hope to have more information to share in 2026. So with that, I'll pass it off to Jennifer, and she's going to talk about looking ahead.
Looking ahead is probably looking ahead to break, right? So before I go to the slide, I'm going to just speak for a minute. We have a few minutes. And so as we think about looking ahead, I wanted to just a couple things. Everett just used words conversion and upgrade in that conversation. And I'm like, I don't know the difference between conversion and upgrade, right? So it's in the glossary. But okay, you'll go over that this afternoon. But for our non-design people that are not as familiar in the room, conversion is when we move from MicroStation into OpenX. Upgrade is when we're moving between OpenX versions. Yes. And so what I would like you to take away is we had to do a conversion that was painful and difficult when we went from legacy into OpenX. The goal is that we don't have to do that again, and that we upgrade in a timely manner with intervals that don't take a lot of effort. And so one of the things, as we talked about this unified workspace and moving into 24, we wanted to try to ensure that it's not going to be large efforts as we move projects forward once they're into OpenX. And so I just wanted to make sure everybody is clear on that, because that is an important thing for folks that don't do design and don't work in this every day. Also, you may have heard the announcement yesterday, and you heard me say we have put together folks into a new unit in pre-construction, our program support unit. And so I would just say our program support unit in general hopefully speaks loudly about the dedication that DOT has to making sure that we are properly supporting this effort across disciplines. And so the formation of that group, or the reformation of people into that group, is intended to be more of a holistic support team for NCDOT. One of the things that has been difficult for me in all of this is we got a lot of people that do a lot of things in a lot of different places, and I have a hard time keeping track always of who I should talk to and who I should ask and who can help. And so we have Vaseem and his CAD integration team that are supporting from a technology and a forward-thinking perspective. We have, and Vaseem, is he in here? Is anybody from CIT? Any folks from CIT in here? Sharonda, I see you. And so I want people to know faces, and that's part of what we'll do in PM training when we get to session 6, is we're going to bring some of these folks in to help people that aren't in Raleigh, don't do this often, to know who the people are and make sure they're connected. Of course, we have the CAD. I got to look at my thing here to make sure I get it right. CAD support services team. And so that's Jason here and his team. And they moved over from roadway, and that's not a slight for roadway. That's more of we're going to take all the great things that you've learned and done in roadway, and we're going to try to use their knowledge and brain power to help them bring other units along with them. Some units are, and Everett said, some units have really done a great job, and some have struggled, and that's okay, right? Because we got to help bring everybody together. I would be remiss to not mention Jeff and the CAD team. He's engineering design and CAD services team, and I'm like, I don't know which CAD team is the CAD team. And so our hope is to get better at having service account emails or places where we can do singular requests, and it will work behind the scenes to get the information or the request to the right person, so that you don't have to understand all the inner workings of all of our people, because it can be complicated. So that's a little bit more of looking ahead, right? So in the end, digital delivery takes everyone. We are looking for feedback, and I think we've said that, and hopefully you've heard that. When we're implementing new workflows, when we're issuing out new guidance, we would like feedback, what works, what doesn't. Let us know what your questions are, what your pain points are. We're partnering with each other through the adoption process. We're asking everyone to be patient. Plans might look different. I'll say this as far as be patient. We've talked a lot about Bentley Infrastructure Cloud, and it's a great tool. It's a web viewer. It's cool, right? And everybody is going to want it. And from a DOT perspective, we should be able to get that to everybody. We don't have processes in place. We don't have people to support it. And so it's part of our pilot right now, and it's on our list. But from an infrastructure perspective from DOT, we're not quite where we need to be. And so there's roles and permissions that have to be set up. The files have to be, what's the right word? Attached, set up, yeah, you have to set everything up so it's not as easy as just connecting your file, clicking a button, and it looks cool in the BIC. You have to make a connection. And so we've got to work on making sure we have people in place to do those things so that we can give the great technology to our folks. We're seeking to understand the why behind different processes, and if we ask why and we can't find a good reason, then maybe we need to move on to something different. We are keeping and being mindful of the greater goal, working to the greater goal of quality, project delivery. You heard it yesterday from Patrick Norman. We must deliver our program, and at the end of the day, if we're not working on things that help us to deliver projects, then why are we here? And we want to share our successes. And so I think one of the most exciting things for me about the pilot projects that we're talking about is I would like to bring some of the great things that we've already seen from our pilot projects forward in future sessions, where we can show folks what teams are doing with modeling, what they're showing us on models, and with the Bentley Infrastructure Cloud Viewer, we can show and share our successes and learn from each other. So I think that is the end of our formal presentation. There is a QR code. It will take you to our NCDOT digital delivery page, which is intended to try to be the wholesale place for everything. And so if it's not on that page, you should find a link from that page. And I guess, do we have, Jason, we have a few minutes for questions, or?
We sure do. That was a great presentation. Thank you. That tells everybody where the train is headed. So get on board.
Yeah, great presentation. I loved every second of it. Just wanted to commend Everett. I had a light bulb moment. You said something about models being used to show issues with a design. Mm-hmm. The light bulb went off from back in school when we used to have to build scale models, because that was the way that you figured out whether or not your design actually worked. That's right. So that makes a lot of sense. But the question I had was about end delivery to a contractor. It's kind of two-part. The first part is that the file type used in the industry for contractors the same, or is it just different? So every project is going to be a different. Okay.
That's right. So those CREF files, I should have mentioned this. The output is a land XML file for all of those, except one's a DWG. There's another file type that in digital delivery spaces is creating a lot of discussion. It's an IFC file type. But the goal is, okay, if a contractor uses Trimble or uses some other construction software, we need to make sure that what we're giving him, he can digest it. And so right now, our approach is let's do land XML. There's a very predictable way to export our designs into that. We'll continue to evolve as we watch other states and see what they do.
My second question is, really from I guess a work constructability standpoint, work zone traffic control, we know that our products are not built, unless it's new location, just straight out. So in essence, I guess at some point the model was not going to be just one model, but put together like Lego blocks, almost like various models coming together. Is that the progression of the model in which it's staged in the same way that our work zone is staged or traffic control is staged, or the way that we're presenting to the contractor in which the project, we're asking them to construct a project?
You want me to? Yeah. So right now, NCDOT's approach is that we are doing one roadway model, and we're going to use named boundaries to represent our earthwork in phases. And so that's one of those, the retaining wall kind of work through flow process. That's one of the things we want to add more clarity on of, okay, how do I go from my roadway model at either DRPS or field inspection? Now I've got my midpoint traffic control plans. How do I then set up my name boundaries so my earthwork balance card and then my summary table all flows from that? And so that's, there's a lot of people in the industry doing lots of different things, which is great because we're trying to figure out how to deliver. What we'd like to do is be able to add clarity of this is the department's expectation when it comes to delivering earthwork and showing that from your one roadway model. Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, that's just the earthwork aspect. My mind goes into, what if you got temporary pavement and you got, who's going to model that? It's a lot. Great.
What securities are in place when we send the files to the contractor so they can't manipulate anything?
So right now, anything that we're giving them is informational purposes only. And from a pilot perspective, the intention is we're not even necessarily making them use them. And we're having a meeting where we have a dialogue about what we provided versus what they developed, how they used or didn't use our information. So we don't have any of that figured out yet. I'll just be honest. So.
Any other there in the back? Hang on a second.
So I have a question about the QC process on this digital thing, because currently all the QC process is still heavily rely on doing it on the PDF files, and as this digital electric thing moving forward, are we planning on letting the QC person to do the QC directly on the electric files? If yes, then is there any training for such to happen? And if not, then how do we? If not, then as this digital thing has more and more function inside, how do we make sure the gap between digital and PDF is it's not too big to have a gap there? Yeah. Thank you.
NCDOT has very much lived in a PDF world, right? And so all of our reviews at this point in time are structured around, and our QA/QC program is structured around PDF plan deliverables. And so that's one of the challenges, and we had to get the guidance in place first to define what it is. And next up is how do we start to think about QA/QC and model review processes that would align with that. We have not gotten into that space yet. We've started having conversations, I think, thinking about our plan review process differently, but right now we are still only living in PDF plan review world. Anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, the only thing I will add is if you think about the QC checklist today, like the ones that you can pull right now for roadway, some of the comments on there are related to plan production. So it's going to ask, is my curve data showing up on all my sheets? But there's a lot in a QC checklist that's talking about your design, asking if your super elevation is rotated correctly. And I'll just say from personal use, I find way more value in reviewing my design when I'm in the model space than just looking at my cross sections and then pulling over my super labeling increments, things like that, because I actually want to know that the model works. So you don't need 3D guidance specifically from the department. It's coming to go ahead and start using the actual modeling tools that are out there to start reviewing. And I think that's the encouragement we want to have today is for industry to start embracing that while the guidance is still being developed.
There is a transition between plan review becoming model review. Getting my steps in today.
Sorry to make you walk. With everybody, or with us kind of shifting over into more shared workspaces kind of situation on project-wise, what is the department's, what are y'all's thoughts on security of those files, of those shared files, between consultants being able to access other consultants' project folders, or also with different disciplines being able to access in those project folders?
So I'm told the answer in some of this, and Everett, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, is version history, right? And personally, I am not a big fan of locking down everything as tight as it has been historically. And don't take that wrong and out of perspective, but we spend a whole lot of time and energy managing who can see what. And I personally feel like we need to stop and be reflective in a way about what we need to actually control and how we control it. So hopefully, as we move forward in some technologies, we allow more information to be seen, because that is ultimately the goal of all of this, right, is to make information more accessible, except for in the ways that we need to really maintain privacy and control. And so I'll let you take that to the next level.
Yeah, the thing I would add is, like, let's think about how we're sharing files already today. So like final survey files, for example. So I get a final survey file and I'm using it locally or maybe on my own project-wise, whatever it might be. And then I'm putting it up on SharePoint, and then my final surveyor is going off and doing something with it. When I get back, I'm having to kind of look at what that file is, and I'm trying to figure out what changed, and that's good. Like, we need more collaboration of, when I give my roadway designs over to my hydro person, I should be thinking, hey, what do we need to coordinate on? Like, what are the actual issues? So to Jennifer's point, rather than making sure that everybody stays exactly in their bucket, we're more concerned with, are people dialoguing across disciplines in a way maybe they're not comfortable with usually, but they need to start doing, because all our models are going to be speaking to one another, and it's going to be important that we have those conversations.
Should I go to BIM manager for a minute?
If you want to, yep.
So I pulled up my glossary here about BIM manager, because at the end of this conversation, I think that starts to go to a BIM manager. And that's a word that I think Vaseem has been saying to me for a long time now. And I'm like, well, can't hear you, I'm not listening, right? And I finally decided it's time to start listening to that conversation. And so a BIM manager, and I'm going to, well, maybe I need to go to this over here, the model manager, is the individual normally identified in a BEP, which I think is the, I don't know, I'd have to switch over that. The model responsible for a specific discipline model. And so that's a role that NCDOT has not had. I suspect that many engineering firms have that already in place. NCDOT has not had that in place. And so somebody whose responsibility is to ensure the accuracy of the model. Jason, you want to elaborate on that at all?
Layla, what I hear in your question, I think it's a straight project-wise question to me. It's roles and responsibilities and access. When you say a mixture, and Jeff's nodding his head, he's the one who assigns the access, his team on this. So you have a project and it has a mixture of disciplines involved, and each discipline may be a different PEF firm. The way the accesses are assigned, you'll have a prime firm. They will get write-only access to all the discipline folders, so they can poke around in any folders. But the subs that they hire, they will only get write access to the folders that they are hired to sub into. So if you sub out the hydro or the roadway portion, they will have write access only to that folder. And so if your concern was other consultants having access to everyone else's files, that shouldn't happen. My thinking's on. Anyone got someone over here? I'll come back to you.
Do you know yet when DOT project managers can expect more instructions on the Bentley Internet Cloud for us to view?
That's our plan for PM training cohort or session 6. So that'll be in the fall.
I think Nathan had one.
Well, while digital delivery is a very, very nice tool, especially the contract-ready files to the contractor, are you still looking into way of the post-let activities like the construction revision or right-of-way revision on let?
It's a unique thing where NCDOT keeps the pre-con firm primarily through pre-construction, and then the files pass away, and then during construction, there are sometimes changes. And so especially as we think about, well, where does the model go? Who's messing with those files? It's something we need to have more thought and clarity about. As we think about what we're passing off, if I pass off a final top surface that then goes and gets used out there to be built, now you're coming back and saying, hey, the existing conditions have changed some. We need to have processes in place for both the construction staff to engage the engineering firm as needed and as would be helpful. And so you've identified one of the places we need to have more clarity. It's on our list.
And the tough thing is we don't want to take away a resident engineer's ability to do a red line, right? I mean, right now in the world that we live in, there's plenty of times when they make a field change, they mark it up, and they roll on their way. The design team never knows. And then there's times when they get into bigger issues and the design team has to come in and do a formal construction revision. So we kind of live in a world where we are having two ways that things can change in the field, formal and informal. And so what does that look like if we want to have a electronic as-built model in the future? Probably means you have to capture all of those red lines at some point in time in the model just to ensure you have an accurate model. But I would not want us to get ourselves in a position where we crippled the ability for construction staff, and I see some sitting in the room. I would not want to cripple their ability to move fast on things in the field when they need to. So I think as we go through this process with CREFs, we'll have to start to have those conversations about that process.
So with the 3D modeling in the curious about like how we handle like utilities, particularly like gas lines. They're not the best at giving accurate information. So like how is DOT's approach with delivering, those files when we're like putting in a drainage line and we're guessing a 3 to 10 foot gas line?
Those were really important conversations that we had, talking about LOD. So where we're headed is right now we're trying to get all the existing utilities in a place where they're showing up three-dimensionally correct. Kind of a nuance is the sanitary sewer. We do pick up Z information on that. And so how can we make sure that our final survey models are showing that in 3D? That's a priority for the department. But then we are really being thoughtful. This is probably another retaining wall moment where we're trying to work through what makes sense. But you're spot on. So we get these private utility owner drawings of what their gas lines should be. How much should we expect and utilize for our UBO coordinators to actually do? We want to make sure we're doing value. But if we don't draw them in and we don't do some sort of assumed depth, we really can't do true conflict analysis, right? Because we need to be able to figure out, is our gas pipe that we just designed going to go around the drainage pipe and the water sewer pipes or not? And so we're trying to be really thoughtful. What makes sense? What's practical? But yeah, there's more guidance needed on how do we handle these wet utilities and dry utilities and what the modeling expectation is. Yeah.
And I'm pulling the reins back a little bit because we could spend a whole lot of time and energy trying to figure out existing utilities and doing SUE locates and depths and all of those things. And that's where I said that may or may not be appropriate for all projects. And so I think this is an area where we have to be super intentional about how much we do, because we could spend a lot of time and energy modeling, drawing, potholing for things that don't necessarily add value. And I would say in general, we can do pretty effective 2D clash detection to at least figure out high level where we may need to dig deeper. And so I encourage all teams to, while we're trying to figure those things out, don't forget that we can turn on all our levels and look at things from a 2D perspective as well. So.
I love that. I think that's the closing thing for this. Turn on all your levels. I think that puts us at lunch, everybody. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you, everyone, for coming.